Welcome back for another episode. My name is Derek. We are going to talk about that time we all were in prison and a whole lot more. But before we do that, we're going to pause 15 seconds for podcast identification.
10 seconds till preacher in the hat. 5 seconds till preacher in the hat. You are now experiencing preacher in the hat.
All right, thanks for joining us for another episode of Preacher in the Hat. My name is Derek. Across from me is Eric, and my dad, Steve, behind the cameras. And on the mic is Chris Sumter. We are glad that you guys have tuned in for another episode. And like I said, we're going to talk about that time we were all in prison, or at least the three of us were in prison. But before we do that, I kind of wanted to open up with something that's kind of been bugging me a little bit, and I mentioned it on the podcast last week. I'm gonna call this "I'm out." All right, and when I say I'm out, I mean like I'm done. I don't want anything to do with it. All right. And I want you, if the two of you have, or even Chris, you chime in if you got something. But I'll lead off. But let me know after this if you got something that you're out on. I'm out on all of the pumpkin stuff. All right, it's September. Okay, middle of September right now. This is probably airing closer to Halloween, I guess. I don't know. But as you get closer to really like Thanksgiving, maybe it gets. What's the height of the pumpkinness? Like, yeah, I'm talking like you walk into the store and everything is pumpkin spice flavored.
So kind of leading up to probably starting in October, because I think you would normally consider that leading up to Halloween, but it really carries into November, I think. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think so too. No, I think so too.
I think it goes close to Thanksgiving, doesn't it?
That's what I thought. It was like it's really like a fall thing, and so I think it goes all the way.
Especially here in the South.
Yeah. For those of you,
it really seems to take off later.
For those of you who are into that sort of thing, fill us in, if you would. Let us know.
So I like ignore it.
Right.
I really do.
But yeah,
because I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
Right
let us know. Let us know what's the deal with.
Yeah.
With
and when does
spice.
it end? When is it no longer like a thing? Because I don't. It's like I said, it's not my thing. Chris, I think, is trying to get on the. He's just falling apart.
Technical difficulties.
One of our boom stands.
Yes.
I was saying that for me, it's like, isn't it a woman thing? A lot of it.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, maybe.
Because I don't know any dudes that are like.
It's not this man thing.
No,
I know
it's. I
that.
mean, Tina loves it. I mean, she.
So maybe we can get her to fill us in on when that is. But
so why don't you do a research for us between now and next week?
Please post in the Facebook or YouTube comments. What's the deal with pumpkin spice? We need to know.
Yeah.
We're trying to get the information.
And when does it end? But there's so many things that they put pumpkin spice flavor on that I don't need pumpkin spice flavor on. I'm out. And this is coming from like, I like pumpkin pie. Like, I'm good with that. But it's like, that's just where it should end.
Keeping in the spirit of that, I guess that time of year, I am out on Halloween. Now, I have been for most of my life, but especially lately. So my 2-year-old daughter, Sadie, cannot stand Halloween decorations. And
why?
More power to her, rightfully so.
Yeah.
That makes complete sense. But every single one of them is scary to her. That's what she always says. Oh, that's scary. She'll go right to her eyes. I'm like, oh, that's scary.
Yeah.
And it's you said
what I'm out on
we're
is
recording this on September 17th, right? And I've already heard that's scary too many times. I'm so ready for Halloween to be over, and it's not even happening this month.
Yeah, you still got like.
Well,
6
I'm out
weeks.
on Halloween is my favorite holiday of the year. That's what I'm out on. I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
People really like to
Are
dress
you
up.
kidding
Man.
me?
I was not.
I've just never been that
yeah,
guy.
yeah.
Nope.
Chris, you a big costume guy?
Anything, not just Halloween.
You like dress up?
No.
If you could see the sweatpants and T-shirt that he's in right now,
This is about
you would
as
understand
crazy
that
as
he's
it is.
telling the truth.
I'm okay up until the pentagrams, and then I'm out on the Halloween thing.
I got you.
All right.
Never have liked it.
What about you, Chris? What are you out on? Uh-oh.
This could.
That-
yeah,
I
we
may
might.
not-
Why not open that gate?
I'm out on
Blown backs.
Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about that.
blown backs. Yeah.
We have now reached 3 of the 4 of the Preacher in the Hat team who has blown their back,
Sympathy
blown their
pains.
back out.
Since
So
we since we started recording,
No,
and
no,
not
no.
even
Not even
even
that.
less time. since
July,
Yeah.
Derek blew out his.
Yeah, July 4th.
August, I blew out my back. August 8th. September, what does this make that? The 15th,
Yeah.
14th.
Yeah.
Chris blew out his back. We're gonna make Dad wear a back brace
Yeah,
all of October.
The last man standing is the 67-year-old. We're gonna have a prayer of blessing over
Yeah.
his back
And
at the end of this
we're going
episode.
to force him to wear a
Yeah.
back brace for the
Truth
entire
be
month
told,
of October.
Truth be told, I didn't have a back blowout, but when I got my e-bike that I just bought about 5 weeks ago, for about a week I didn't ride it because I had a stiff back.
See,
Not a blown out
that's
back,
how.
but a stiff
That's
back.
how it
Yeah,
starts.
that's how it starts. Yeah, you need to make
No,
sure
it
you
didn't,
get
it
some
didn't get
good.
worse. I'm fine.
Good.
now.
Mm,
I'm fine
yeah,
now.
good.
I'm good.
All right.
I'm good.
Get you some good rest on that thing because apparently that's a thing around here.
Yeah.
We're gonna,
We passed that in the air like
like a cold, like a cold.
Yeah.
What's really crazy is when people ask you how you did it, and you think
It's
to
never
yourself,
a good story.
Yeah, I want a better story,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and you just don't have it.
It's never a good story.
You just don't have a good story.
It's not a
because
good
Chris
story.
wasn't lifting something heavy; he was setting something down.
I was swabbing my ear out.
Yeah, it's just
Right,
like
yes.
the
I don't
the
even know
worst
if I
stuff.
want to go into this.
I was,
Swabbing the ear.
Well, that's not how he actually blew his.
I was picking up a toy in the hallway. That's my crazy story. Eric, I know yours was just kind of like
Mine was nothing, and it happened over time. But you know, the moment where where it completely gave out, and that was it.
Yeah.
It was over. It was done. When I was getting onto the couch. Riddle me that.
Oh, let's go to prison. Let's go.
Riddle
to
me
prison.
that.
Let's go to prison. Let's go to prison.
don't get old, kids.
Much less stressful. Much less.
I do
stressful.
feel like it's kind of a coming of age thing where, you know, when you're younger and you hear the old folks say, "Oh, Billy's down on his back again," and I'm like, "What is he talking about?" And then it happens.
In South Georgia years ago, I never could understand the old folks said, "Oh, my sciatica." I thought that was like a nickname for something, and then I found out.
Is that a
years
back
ago,
thing? Is sciatica a back
it's-
thing?
Well, it comes from your back down to your leg, and it's a nerve.
Oh,
it's like
yeah.
it's pain, but
Mine was
but
not
it comes from your
nerve
back
related.
down.
Yeah,
thank
thankfully
goodness.
mine was muscle only.
Yeah.
That allows it to turn around a lot quicker. I feel
Yeah.
like. Just get some anti-inflammatory in the system, and it can turn around pretty quick.
Anyway,
Moving right along.
yeah, let's talk about that time we all went to jail. I mean,
Together.
So set the scene. Derek and I we tried to do the math here right before we aired.
I think it was 2010.
You do?
I think so.
2010. That sounds about
2010.
right. Mm-hmm.
All right, so we'll call me and you 19 or 20, because it could have been one or the other. I don't remember what time of year we went. Doesn't matter, really. All I know is that it wasn't cold,
It was not.
and it wasn't burning hot. I don't think either. So it was probably fall or spring.
And you had a band at that time called Redemption Row.
Yep. So we were 19 and 20, and Dad, what was around that time, 2009, 2010? What was your prison ministry involvement?
A lot of it, I was working for UAB at that point, so I wasn't doing, and I was in criminal justice, so I was working with criminal justice clients for 20 years, but I was not in prison as much. So I would
Okay.
go in a lot of times then for like what they used to call crusades or revival meetings, and so it would be like one nights or that kind of thing. So I wasn't doing a lot of in-prison stuff
Okay.
at that point.
So 2010, it had been how long since you were the chaplain at Holman Prison?
Well, I left in 84.
Okay, so
So why did we pick
20
Holman Prison? Because
Well,
it's
because-
down in Atmore.
this is a great question to ask Dad.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, we had a connection with Chris Sumter, Chaplain Chris Summers.
I was about to say.
I'm sorry. Excuse me. Chris Summers. He was crazy as Chris Sumter, though. But
Clearly, he led us into a prison.
he listened to prison, but he was the chaplain there, and I thought it would be a really good experience for you all to be able to go back to the place where I cut my teeth. If we were going to go into a prison and sing, and you were going to go in there and do a concert, I thought no better place than Holman Prison, and that's why we did it.
Yeah, I didn't remember at all the decision why or about which one.
It was something
So-
I wanted us to do.
No, no. I knew that. I just couldn't remember
Why we went there.
why we went to one that was 3+ hours.
The reason
away.
we did is because that's where I started
Okay.
in 1979. And I was 22. You guys were almost 19. When I started, I was 22. So when you guys came in to visit, you were like 19. Some of the guys that were there when I was there when I was 22 were still there when you were 19.
Oh, I remember. I
And-
remember you.
I introduced
Yeah,
you to some.
he knew quite a few of the guys.
And they thought that y'all were the spitting image of what I was at 22.
yeah.
I remember one guy. I don't remember his name. But we were putting on this concert. That's the whole reason we went there.
Right.
And I remember you telling one guy that it was someone you had known, someone had been there. A quote, air quotes, big shot at the
Yeah.
prison. How much can you be a big shot when you
Yeah.
only have that much room to move? But you told him he needed to come by for the concert, and he said he had a lot of stuff going on. He wasn't sure if he was going to make it, and he did. He didn't come.
Yeah, that was a common theme.
I'll pencil you in.
When I would have Bible classes, years ago, guys would say, "Man, I don't know if I can come or not, man. I got a lot going on." I said, "Man, you got life without parole. Man. You know what I'm saying?
nothing
Like
to
you got
do.
life without parole, and you can't come for an hour."
I don't
You
know
what I'm
why
saying?
that always stuck with me.
Well,
He's
because it
not
was a
sure if he
comedy
can make
I
it.
forgot he didn't show up.
Now, I will tell you this, not at a concert, but one of the best excuses I ever got from somebody not making my Bible class was a man named Javan. And he came to me after Bible class. He said, "Steve," he said, "I'm sorry I missed your class today." He said, "But my car broke down."
That's good.
That was that good. I
can-
told him, I said, "You are excused."
I can-
I said, "That is absolutely the best excuse I've ever heard. You are literally excused from class."
I can respect that one.
Me too.
I can. So I wish we had Mom sitting down here because I would love to get publicized her thoughts on when you told her you wanted to take us into a maximum security prison.
I don't think she flinched. You have to
Wow,
ask her.
Mom. Okay.
Yes,
I don't, no, I'm just saying. I don't think she did. From my perspective, she didn't flinch because she was so used to me doing it, and I was young when I did it. She never really worried too much about it. I mean, she was concerned sometimes, but I don't think she was worried about that. I don't believe she was. But we'll ask her, and we'll come back with a report.
You can take them, but don't forget the formula.
Don't forget the formula. Yeah, that's right. And don't forget to bring them back. But anyhow.
I remember on the way, not on the way, like as we got there, and for some reason, one of the things that sticks with me is that we're getting there. You got off the interstate. I don't guess it was that far off the interstate, but I don't remember exactly. And come up on it. It seemed like it was kind of in the middle of nowhere. Maybe that's just how I remember it. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But pull up, and the parking lot was awful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like potholes,
Always
like
has been.
begatting potholes.
Yeah. It out of Atmore, a few miles. Not much to look at when you came in there. Just kind of rises up out of a field. and there it
Yeah,
was.
that's okay.
Nowadays, there's much less people in that prison. I talked to the chaplain down there the other week, about 3 weeks ago, and he said that they have about 300 or 400 there. When you guys were there, they would have had probably 800 or 900, maybe 1,000.
It was crawling with people on it.
Yeah. Now, in half of that prison was in a lockup area, so there was individual cells. Did we take a tour down that way, down toward death row and so forth?
Yes,
We
we shook someone's hand.
Yeah, okay.
A guy or two that he knew.
Yeah.
who was still up there.
So we went down that way, but see, half of the prison was in lockups and so forth.
We went through. We went in the solitary area.
Yeah,
too.
right. Yeah.
That was real weird. That was the strangest part of the entire.
I used to spend 3 to 4 hours a day, 4 days a week, down in that area of the prison, talking one-on-one to guys, one-on-one. I did it for years, for about 4 or 5 years, and would go down on this tier and talk, and then go to this tier and talk the next day and that kind of thing. And as I was functioning as a chaplain too, so what I would do is I'd take them greeting cards or birthday cards that they wanted to send out to their family that was free of charge. I would give them Bibles, Bible studies, and that kind of thing. That's what I did a lot down there. Frankly, guys, it's a lot where it was like a lab for me, honestly. I learned a lot about the thought processes of people in prison. I learned a lot about the challenges they had both prior to prison and since they're in, because these were the guys that were in a prison within a prison. Now, where we went to the chapel was in what we call population.
Yeah.
If you remember,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You go out back there and there was a big dormitory. That was the honor dorm.
I remember
they
that
called
too.
it, and that kind of thing. So where we were for the concert was not in the lockup area.
Right.
But that place is also where we had the first death row seminar that Prison Fellowship ever had, was down in the area of the lockup area, and there was a fenced in kind of cell block area. It was larger, and there was 15 of us in that, 15 guys off of death row, and some volunteers, and we were there all weekend. Now, when I say all weekend, obviously they went back up to sleep and we left.
Yeah.
But we came in for like 3 days. We did in 1980 and 81 is where we did that. So I did a lot of time on death row too, talking to guys one-on-one too. Every Thursday we would go down there and do that. So that was in one part of the prison, which y'all weren't able to spend as much time in. But then down the hallway, there were so many memories there for me. And it was amazing to me. When you say 2010, that means probably it was about 30 years after I had, had come
26,
there.
25 plus.
Yeah, that we were there looking at some of that stuff, and for me, it brought back so many memories. The memories of my first encounter with spiritual warfare was in that chapel where you did the concert. The first inmate prison prison church that I had ever seen, and was blessed enough to, with Ricardo Cook and some other people, to see a church, and Chaplain Robert Smith, who was the chaplain then, to see one of the first inmate prison churches with a pastor, assistant pastor, and deacons be raised up. Ricardo came out of death row. He came down. He got life without parole, and he and I would meet in that chapel every day at noon and pray that God would raise up a church. And about a year and a half later, he did. And it was powerful, the stuff that God did through that inmate church. And these guys could preach and teach. They had their own choir and so forth. So now 30 years later, you're back there with me, and there is an inmate church. There was an inmate church there. I think they had leaders. Did not some of the guys get up and talk at first, I think, maybe welcome you and that kind of stuff, if I remember correctly?
I don't remember that.
Yeah, a guy named Anthony. Anthony was one of the pastors, Pastor Anthony, and so forth. Now, there are some other prisons, for example, Angola Prison, where they have 29 inmate churches that are connected with denominations. They're officially recognized, and they have inmate pastors. That's still going on now in places like Angola. But back then in 1980, when we started that church, it was something brand new. So I really wanted you all to just be able to be in that space, number one, and also be able to worship with the guys and have them worship with you. And that's rewarding for them to see a father whose sons love Jesus. that is the most unusual thing for them. When I tell them stories of my children and grandchildren, and when I tell them the stories about my children and grandchildren, they listen intently. They love to get in. So I knew that they would welcome the opportunity to meet you guys, and then also to see that you were godly young men, and that blessed me for them to be able to see that, and it blessed them because many of them obviously did not grow up in a godly home. And so it was strange for them. So what was usual to you was very unusual to them for you to come in that time, in that moment.
It did not feel usual to me to be in there.
Didn't feel usual?
No.
Well, let's talk
That
about
was
what you were
that
feeling.
was highly stressful, even to the
Really?
point of approaching the place.
Really?
Yeah. I just remember, not going. You don't really know why you're stressed out, but you're just stressed out.
Yeah, gotcha.
And there was never a moment really while you're in there where you take a deep breath and like feel fully relaxed. That I'm sure comes with experience.
Yeah.
And,
yeah,
just being,
right. Yeah.
but just kind of the first time you're like always on, on edge. or
Yeah,
something,
we're like we're touring the facility or whatever, and there's like 2, 3, I don't know how many, maybe sometimes more, sometimes less, of like just dudes following us the whole way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And catcalling.
That was mostly in lockup.
That's
but,
right.
So that wasn't like as stressful, but it was really, I mean, it's weird, it's like really strange, a unique experience, but that was really only
Well, let me tell you a
in
funny
lockup
story.
because I feel like they probably guys out there would probably they probably would have got a little heat for that, I guess, because it's not like we were walking around without guards and stuff.
Yeah.
So
Well, what was weird is we used to take tours for kids coming through there. And I remember one time I was down there in the lockup area, and all of a sudden these guys started barking, and it was not like a barking at the girls or anything. They were barking crazy, and I knew these cats, and I was like, well, they were barking like dogs, but I knew they sounded like cats. But anyhow, I went to them and I walked over there and I said, "What in the world are y'all doing?" I said, "You're acting stupid." And he said, "They think we're animals. Let's prove it." So some of that was a shtick. You know what I'm saying? Like some of what they were doing with you. It's just kind of their
like I said,
deal of, y'all are looking at us like we're caged animals. We'll let you, we'll oblige you kind of deal. So maybe some of that was happening that day too. It wasn't certainly as intense as it was that other time I'm describing, but
yeah. I just remember, I remember being followed, and then there's like this in the honor dorm. There's not really a huge space, outdoor space, but like it had its own fence.
Yeah.
And some dude had just like worn out a path walking the edge.
Yeah, right,
And he was walking it the whole time. Any time we were there, I saw him. And I don't guess we were in that area for very long, but I assume he probably walked that half the day.
Yeah,
I
probably.
don't know.
Some do. Some if they can.
Who knows?
As long as he can be out on the yard.
Yeah.
When he had yard time.
And
But in that same place, guys, out that same fence, 15 guys walked out one time. They cut through the fence and got out in the woods. I've also been seeing that fence when that outside fence area y'all were in, when they had a riot down there, and they stripped everybody out and made them butt naked, and they put the whole population out in that yard for about 8 hours. So I saw that stuff. I saw there's just a lot of things I saw for that were my first, at that prison in the 5 years that I was there.
When what do you remember, Derek, from the actual time we were there for playing a concert?
I don't remember that much about playing it. I don't know. I couldn't tell you what songs we did or
Oh,
things
yeah,
like that
yeah.
really. I do remember when we first got in, we were setting up. We had this. We brought in like a small portable sound system. And,
Yeah.
And we, for some reason, I can't remember why we have, because we usually didn't, but we had a wireless microphone with us.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't remember where we got it from.
When we first started
wired.
talking about doing this episode, I was trying to rack my brain thinking about why we had a wireless mic. And
Yeah, I
don't
could
remember.
not.
Yeah, I don't know either.
I can't place it. But it was one of the guys. Like we were doing this check, and it was one of the guys. He may have been involved in the church or something.
He was in there for quite a while.
Yeah. And he was
beforehand.
like he had been like. Was he showing us around? Or I don't know. I'm not sure. But he was we were familiar with him
Yes.
because we had seen him multiple times that
Yeah.
day. And and anyways, he got a hold of the wireless microphone, and he starts walking around the building, and he goes, it's a small room.
Yeah.
Like it's you talk about it like being a chapel, but it's like it's a room.
Yeah.
But he literally goes as far away from it as he can, and he's just kind of like walking around, and he smiles, and I can't remember what he said.
Yeah.
But he says something, and he's like, because like he
Yeah.
heard himself
He
like
can't
all the way
believe
back.
the-
He couldn't believe
the tech. Yeah.
First wireless mic.
Yeah, the something that he's holding here is making a sound over there. But I mean, 2010, you're thinking like that was really common technology.
Yeah,
Like that was
He'd
not
been in
that
that
was not a
long.
new thing.
He'd been in
but
that
he'd
long,
been
yeah.
in that long and maybe he had like known it existed or whatever, all this
Yeah.
stuff, whatever.
He was experiencing
but he
it,
was
though.
experiencing
Yeah.
it and doing it himself for the first time.
Interesting.
And so that was to me, that's the thing that like that stuck with
Yeah.
me the most from that.
Me
is
too.
the-
One
and
of-
it, particularly like from a positive perspective, because you were like seeing someone see like I don't know. It's like kind of hard to describe.
Yeah.
Like what it would be
It's
like.
like you were. It was like you got a chance to go back in time and introduce technology
Yeah.
to someone who had no idea.
Yeah.
Like a
Yeah.
Back
It was-
to the
and who had
Future
never
thing almost.
experienced
Yeah.
it at all. It'd be like going back into the 80s and handing someone an iPhone
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
just
right.
seeing like
It was like
their
it was an opera. It
reaction.
felt like
Right.
being able to do that. It
Yeah.
was really
Yeah,
cool.
That's pretty cool.
So that was I remember that most like
well,
I
they really
don't,
liked your sound system too, if I remember.
Well,
correctly.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, that
I mean,
one it was unique too.
It
but
was way better. All the stuff we brought in was 20 times better than any
That's
of
right.
the stuff
They
they
really liked
had.
it. Or
were
And that's
allowed
not
to
a
have.
and that's not a like sparkling review of all the stuff we had. It was they just didn't have very much
Just
at
the
all
environment
to
you were in.
to use.
Well, let's set the stage just a little bit too, to say the impact of it was not just the people that came into that room, which was a good number of people, but even though the guy that couldn't make it didn't come, but anyhow, if you go down a hall in this prison, and to the left, you will see right before you go back into the main gate area where all the dormitories are, is where the chapel is. And to the left, you'll see windows. There are windows. And so everybody that walks the hallway, coming out from there up to the chow hall, going out on the yard, everywhere, can see what's going on in the chapel. So what you probably don't remember, and I remember a little bit of it and have experienced it many times over, is it's not only impactful for the people that were in the room exactly, because they could come in and be there, but it was also for the people that walked up and down, and they would look in and they would see things that happened off and on for years.
I remember guys standing out at the windows.
Yeah, they would stand out the window, kind of listen, watch, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that was in the main area of because it's a main thoroughfare right there where the chapel is. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember much of the actual like music. I have no clue.
Yeah.
What we did. I really have no idea.
Well, one thing you'll learn too, that just like the microphone is new, sometimes the songs that the people bring in are new. See, they were used to old church songs. You know what I'm saying? For the most part, I mean, even in that group, they would have some new worship songs, but they didn't have, for the most part, have worship bands. Now that has changed some over the last 20, well, not 20 years, but 14, 15 years, is that they have some bands now that do worship songs and so forth.
Yeah. But it didn't really matter. I mean, ultimately for me, like that wasn't, what songs we did didn't really,
Yeah.
well, it wasn't ever going to be the lasting thing.
Did y'all ever go to St. Clair Prison with me? And with
That is
Ken?
the Holman Prison is the only prison I've ever
Prison.
walked
okay,
into.
Okay, all right, okay. There's a band up at St. Clair Prison that several of the bands would play with when they come in. So the guys would pick up their guitars and so forth, and the bands would play with the Free World Band, we call them, like that's what y'all were. Then the prison band would do it. That is quite an experience. It's fun. These guys are good. Some of them are really, really good.
I don't
musicians.
remember meeting anybody really in there that talked about
Being a
music
musician.
with us.
I don't think so.
I don't think they had much of that.
Not in that group of
at the
people. I
time.
remember that as being unique, actually, for me in that prison. It was like when they had the prison choir back then. They had a piano, maybe a piano, but we didn't even have guitar. I don't think back then. Not years ago when I was there first. But they had the old school a cappella choir sing along the line in a lot of black church choirs and a lot of Pentecostal church choirs. They had that style of music, old hymns and that kind of thing to a really good beat. Yeah.
But I think the thing that sticks with me the most, and now that the story about the guy with the wireless mic is the story that sticks the most to me, but the feeling that stuck the most was not even while we were in there, but because I didn't realize it as much until we left, was as soon as you leave. We left everything in the car as much as we could. You don't take a phone in, or that kind of stuff. And when you come out, I can't remember if we got handed anything or what. I don't know if we had to leave anything. Anyways, but you got to go through all these. It felt like it's a process just to like walk out the door, because you can't just leave. You can't just leave and be like, all right, I'm out of here. It's like there's this process. As well, and maybe it wasn't that big a deal, but it felt like it leaving. But then, so you get outside. To the best of my memory, you get through some of those checkpoints, and then there's still like quite a bit of fencing and gates and such. But it's like when you hit the final gate and you actually walk out of it, there is even though nothing is changing because you're already outside, so it's not like you're walking from like this. I mean, yeah, it was dingy inside or whatever, but like you're not walking from, this huge burst of light when you open the door, or anything like that. You're already outside, but then when you hit that gate and you walk one step forward into the parking lot, there's just a massive difference in like on you. And I don't really know how else to describe it. From when you were in there to like when you walk out. I think it's probably. I don't think anyone who understands and believes in spiritual warfare would much disagree with saying that spiritual warfare probably rests heavier on prisons than most any other place in the world. I mean, some maybe less than others. I don't know, but there was just like this completely different feeling of freedom, like when you walk out, and that's when somebody who knew they were going to get to walk out, at the end of the day, but it was still that heavy,
extremely heavy.
Yeah. When you're in there.
I mean, you talked about like we were walking around in like the dorms and stuff like that. I remember thinking like we can go back.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Yes. I'm like, all right, I think I've seen it. Like, there was no desire to like stay in one place that long while you were in there. And I would say like the thing is like it wasn't even necessarily like fear. You're just like, this is not This
So
is
some years-
not a good play. Like, this is,
Right.
you know, like, let's
So
just.
some years later, you did several concerts at a women's work release center
No, we
in
had
Birmingham.
done some before then.
Yeah, it was before.
Yeah, before
Before
then.
and after.
Before and after. Did you have that same feeling there that you had at Holman?
Nope.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
That one was also like, we did some in their like courtyard.
Yeah, you
and
did.
maybe
you,
one,
Yeah, you
like-
did a courtyard.
But it was
most
like
of the-
right inside. I mean, it was literally like
It's a like
The
it was
door
a
was on the other
completely
side.
different.
Yeah.
It was also
Yeah.
a completely different enter
Yeah.
enter and exit process.
Right.
You
just
just
like you literally like walk up to the window and
Check
handed them
in.
your ID and
yeah,
and they're like,
check
all right,
in,
right
check-
over there,
and then when you left, you just left.
yeah,
Well, I remember
it felt
one
like a
time you did
slightly
it
more intense DMV.
Yeah.
at the work release center that one night when
Yeah.
I preached, I think, and you guys, man, y'all rocked the house.
That was just me and Derek.
That was
And that was before.
it was before we went down to
that was
Holman.
before
it?
we went to Holman.
Okay, I didn't remember the
That was
sequence
freezing
there.
cold outside. I was playing drums. Couldn't feel my hands. I can't imagine how it felt playing guitar.
Yeah.
But that was
Couldn't feel the
yeah.
fingers.
It was freezing cold in that courtyard.
Well,
But
let me,
yeah, that was nothing like
That was nothing like.
Prison.
I mean, there was, and it was like it was. I don't know how much you remember about that, and that was like it was almost high energy.
There was
too.
there was hope there.
Yeah, like
There's
we
not,
played-
there was not hope. in
Like I can
Holman.
still hear, like I can still hear them singing. Lean on me.
Yeah, and when,
and like and
they were-
clapping along.
yeah, they
like,
were more participatory.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
whatever.
that's right.
But I think a lot of that had to do with like just hope.
yeah.
in general.
There's a
I mean-
much greater level of freedom or possible freedom there. The
To
fact
me,
that, they were there.
that's if I had to define it, I
that
think
was
that's
the
what it
difference.
was.
You were in Holman, and like for I don't know what percentage of those guys, but a big percentage of those guys, there wasn't that much hope.
This was all there was.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean some of them, not that some of them didn't have hope in Jesus, because there were plenty of guys in there who did.
Right.
But beyond, like, there was nothing beyond those walls at all.
I really am grateful that we're going to have a chance to keep going here on this prison series, because you guys are raising some stuff that all kinds of stories and thoughts come to my mind. But what struck me in this discussion tonight, finally, for me, I didn't know y'all were feeling all of that when you were there. I'm hearing tonight, 14 years later, I'm hearing tonight some of what you experienced, because it was so usual for me.
Mm-hmm.
I was not experiencing the same thing you were. Now, I kind of knew that on the one hand, but one thing that I think that is helpful for me, was helpful for me for you to go, was we have shared many things in ministry through the years. You know, like the work at Grace and Truth as a pastor, my work as a pastor, my work with Good News Fellowship. We've shared that. You've kind of known more about that up front and personal. This is one area of ministry in life that you don't know as much about. You hear stories about it, but experientially you don't know as much about that. And when you talk about, Eric, that sense of weight, I often said, I'm just going to agree with you now. I often said I could go to prison for 8 hours and not really task-wise, T-A-S-K, task-wise, do a lot, but I'd walk out of there exhausted. And part of it was that constant sense of something's in the atmosphere, something's going on. It could be lack of hope, it could be conflict, it could be tension, it could be anger, it could be all kinds of abuse and all those kind of things that were going on. And so it is what people, it's why they say that a prison experience actually is, many people who'd have a prison experience for any length of time have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, because of what you felt that day. Imagine feeling that 24 hours, 7 days a week for 50 years of your life.
Right. Yeah.
Which some of those guys that you saw that day had life without parole. Many of them did. They had longer sentences. I know one guy that was in there, he had 700-year sentence. You heard me right, 700-year sentence. And so I've been amazed that there's been any hope in prison because of what you're describing, because you can sense it and feel it. And so that Jesus is able to break in the middle of all that is absolutely unbelievable. And for him to see that, I mean, it is absolutely a miracle when that happens. And that's what I've got to see for 45 years is miracle after miracle after miracle of Jesus breaking into an environment where there was no hope, there is no something, and it changing. Now, it doesn't change the whole atmosphere of the whole prison always, but it changes the hearts and minds of many people in prison. And that's why I keep going back.
Well, we're going to get into a few of those miracles, I think, here in the coming episodes. But for now, the good news and the final end to this story is we all got out.
We got out. That's right.
Go to prison, kids.
Yeah,
stay out of prison.
Stay out of prison, for sure.
But come back with me sometime here. We ought to go back in again like that. Let's do it.
Got to prepare mentally for that.
Oh, man.
Like we were saying.
You'll like it better this time.
Yeah.
You'll be better prepared.
All right. Thank y'all so much for joining us. For Eric and Steve, Chris behind the cameras, I'm Derek. This has been another episode of Preacher in the Hat, and we'll catch y'all next time.